Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, September 24th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Wisconsin game is today, the game against Michigan in 63 days. That Wisconsin game kicks off at 7:30 on ABC. It'll be the third primetime game in 4 weeks for the Buckeyes, which brings not a ton of joy to your favorite local beat reporters, but which does mean you have a full day to watch college football before turning your attention to the Ohio State game. One of the folks who I'll be up very, very late with tonight is Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. He's here to help preview the full day of games. Tony, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Excited to be spending the day watching football, talking about football, covering football, and then also talking about football.
Not necessarily in that order, but probably mostly in that order. Yes, it is. They are good full days of football, which is never a bad thing when you consider how few of them we get during the course of the year. So we are going to start. If you want to hear us talk about the Ohio State-Wisconsin game, there is a brand new episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast that dropped on Friday with us breaking down all the elements of the Ohio State-Wisconsin game and where Ohio State might have an advantage and where Wisconsin may be able to challenge them and game predictions and all that stuff. So check out the Buckeye Weekly feed for that. On this show, we're going to start at noon with the Maryland-Michigan game. This is the first team that is actively participating in the 2022 season that Michigan is going to have faced. So, Tony, how much are we actually going to learn from this game?
I think we will learn more from this game than we've learned anything from Michigan this year. And the Maryland passing attack is dynamic. Solid quarterback, talented receivers. There are questions about Michigan's defensive line in terms of the pass rush. That was the thing that set them apart from everybody else in the Big Ten last year. So what does it look like this year? And that pass rush last year made the secondary a lot better and than it probably was. And so now what does the secondary look like this year if the pass rush isn't as disruptive as it was a year ago? So I think in that vein, we're going to learn quite a bit about the Michigan pass defense. Now, in the past, we've staked some hopes in the Maryland offense in past seasons in terms of let's see what they can do against this team or this defense and this defense, and generally they fall flat. So there's that chance that it happens in this game as well, but at least it will tell us more about Michigan's pass rush, Michigan's pass defense, because if they can hold up to this Maryland offense, I think that means something.
Yeah, I don't think that Maryland is going to have much to offer on defense on Saturday, but yeah, the offense I think will be the first actual test for that Michigan secondary, and like you said, the pass rush. I get the feeling that this is one where Maryland probably scores a couple times and has the personnel to put a couple touchdowns on the board and make this a competitive game for maybe a half, and then Michigan ends up scoring something in the 40s to something in the high 20s or low 30s, and Maryland can't score consistently as Michigan because Michigan is scoring on most of their drives. So that's at least one that's going to be worthy of a Michigan Monday podcast for the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. So we'll have that to look forward to at least. Also at noon, a game we're probably not going to do a whole show recapping, but Clemson visiting Wake Forest. Wake is 3-0. They've played a couple maybe okayish teams. The most recent was a 37-36 win over Liberty, which is they're fine. They're probably not Malik Willis Liberty this year, but they're okay. Wake has scored 44, 45, and 37 points this season. Clemson's defense obviously is substantially better, should be able to hold them to something in the 20s, maybe low 30s. I do think it's fair to wonder, Tony, if there's at least a chance that the Clemson offense has been, it's kind of been stuttering at times this season. Will they be able, if Wake's in the mid to high 20s or even low 30s, can the Clemson offense get into the mid or high 30s against not a great Wake defense, but can they get there and do enough to win today?
I really have no faith in the Clemson offense to outscore or to look good, look great. They will be able to look adequate. I think the difference here is going to be the Clemson defensive line. And we know that Wake Forest offense, the way they run their running game is with some delays and things like that. And delaying things against the Clemson defensive line is maybe not the best way to go, where Clemson will be in the backfield taking the handoff at times. Sam Hartman, Wake Forest quarterback, is back, played a couple of games, threw a couple of interceptions against Liberty. So 7.5 is, I feel okay about that. I feel okay laying that. I think the Clemson defensive line will handle things. I would probably take the under pretty comfortably in this one because I don't expect Clemson to score a lot. I don't expect them to give up many points, but crazy things happen at Wake. And so we can all root for that.
Yeah, that is if you've never been there, that is a very, very unique campus and stadium setting. It is, Winston-Salem. It's not, it's a city, but that campus itself is just a very, very, it's a very small private school. It feels, not at all like you're in a city. You got the big chapel there on the quad. It is a very, very pretty place to go to college and to wander around the campus for a little while. But yeah, it's weird things can happen there. When your mascot is a cursed deacon, I guess that is one of the potential fallouts from that. 3:30, Florida visiting Tennessee. It feels like we kind of know what the Gators are at this point. Good but not great, probably. I mean, beating Utah is impressive, but then losing to Kentucky is like, yeah, okay, so you're not a top 5 team, okay. It probably maybe a top 15, top 20 team. Vols were favored by 11 last I saw, and I don't know that we completely know what Tennessee is, but with the tempo they play at, it feels like they probably pull away late just because Florida doesn't have the depth to keep up, and they're still dealing with the crappy recruiting of Jim McElwain and Dan Mullen. They're just a little thin, and if you have not watched Tennessee plays fast this year. What do you think? Is Tennessee actually a legitimate top 10 team, and are we going to see that, sort of proven on the field this weekend?
Well, the one thing that we do know about Tennessee is they're fun to watch, and you mentioned the speed at which they play. That alone just creates issues for other programs that could make Tennessee a legitimate top 10 team in terms of just being there throughout the season. Like, would they hold up to just will they hold up to Georgia? Well, we'll find out. Will they give Georgia some issues? We will see. Hendon Hooker, their quarterback, is really good. He can make some plays. I heard a stat that Anthony Richardson, Florida quarterback, is like one of 4 or 5 players in the nation with 4 interceptions and no touchdown passes this season, which is not good. And I'm not sure what the situation with Jack Miller is in terms of is he healthy there at Florida? He might be time to look elsewhere than Anthony Richardson because he can make some plays, but he also makes plays for the defense and can't just be consistent enough to sustain things. And the one thing you have to be able to do against Tennessee's offense is sustain and keep up and keep your defense off the field and give them a breather. And I don't know that he's the guy to do that. And it's crazy because it's like a 10.5 point line that I'm seeing, and everybody's just like, yeah, definitely Tennessee. Like there's no thought to giving any action to Florida.
And, I think that's a really good point where the road to victory for Florida here involves stringing together a bunch of 10-play, 12-play drives, chewing some clock, get a quick drive, get Tennessee off the field, and keep that offense on the sideline for basically a full quarter if you can string together a couple of those long drives. But, I don't know if they can get Tennessee's offense off the field, and I don't know if they can keep their offense on the field. So, yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I'm going with Tennessee here, and, I don't know if I'm ready to live in a world where Tennessee is actually legitimately a top 10 team again for the first time in 15, 20 years. It has been a minute, and with the way the season's going, they'll lose a stupid one. And yes, I am. They still do have Alabama and Georgia on the schedule, so I don't think we're going to have to worry about college football playoff Tennessee. But interesting Tennessee is not such a bad thing. At 4:00, Oregon visiting Wazoo. I thought we knew what Oregon was after week 1, but they've actually bounced back. If you stop paying attention to Oregon in about the second quarter of that Georgia game, number 1, I can't blame you, but number 2, you might want to pay attention again. They might be better than you think because they've been pretty solid since then. Wazoo unbeaten. That includes a win at Wisconsin, which is, that was not a thing of beauty, but it was a win. So, okay, Oregon at Wazoo. Speaking of places like Winston-Salem where weird things can happen, let's talk up at the Palouse. Tony, who you got?
I think we owe an apology to Oregon basically jumping on the BYU game last week, and that thing was like 38-7 after 3 quarters. So give Oregon some credit for bouncing back from that Georgia loss and I think showing who they are now. And I would expect that to continue against Washington State. But, the Pac-10 games, at least this is like a 4 p.m., so it's not some crazy 10:30, Pac-12 after dark. As I said, Pac-10, I realize. But I like Oregon in this one. Washington State had no business winning that Wisconsin game, but they did. I put that more on Wisconsin and Washington State. I think as long as Oregon doesn't give this game away, they will be fine. I think 6.5 makes me feel like this is definitely an Oregon take. Go win by a touchdown, and then call it a day.
All right, next up, Arkansas and Texas A&M playing in the shadow of the Walmart at Jarrah World because, I don't know, reasons. This is the irresistible force of Arkansas's offense against the immovable object of Texas A&M's defense, and the resistible force of the Aggies' offense against the extremely movable Hogs' defense. This feels like a game in the 20s favors A&M. Anything too far in the 30s is probably good news for Arkansas. I mean, what do you think?
I just can't put any faith in A&M, and if this is at home, maybe. But I also feel like once you start putting faith in Arkansas, that's when they get you, because they can only go so far. And so it's like once you jump on, it's like, oh, blew a tire. This is where we're going to have to let you off here. And it's like, but I just literally jumped on. My bag is still right here. But I know I am taking Arkansas because of their momentum. And the thing about Texas A&M is they can't build their own momentum because they don't have the offense for it. They don't have the quarterback for it. I know they made a quarterback change, and I base a lot of this also on my experience watching Max Johnson at LSU, which was not good. And I know he's he's a much older player, but I still can't get those images out of my head.
Yeah, and I think at some point, if Max Johnson doesn't fix it, and I'm not sure Max Johnson is going to fix it, maybe it's time to have the conversation about the Jimbo Fisher offense, which has kind of not been great since, about the Jameis Winston era. And, if you constantly can't find quarterbacks to run your offense, maybe it's time to not run your offense anymore, because it might not be an everyone else problem. It might be a you problem, Jimbo Fisher. But you don't have to listen to me. You have $95 million of contract, so... Sorry, he is just right now the gif of the guy with the stack of bills holding it like a phone. Like, I can't hear you over all this money. That's Jimbo Fisher right now, so that's all right. Last up, another team in the Pacific Northwest beyond Oregon that is kind of sliding under the radar right now, Washington. They, might be a legitimate conference title contender with Michael Penix running the show on offense. That is Kalen DeBoer taking that team over after the Jimmy Lake debacle. He has been, they have, between the two of them, this is all of a sudden, this is like the shocking rebound team this year where the talent was there and Jimmy Lake was just such a disaster as a head coach that they way underperformed last year, but the talent was still there. And, this week they host Stanford. Are you buying Washington? How many more games do you need to see before you buy Washington as a legitimate Pac-12, at least title game participant?
I will buy Washington against Stanford. It's interesting. Washington has almost become the Washington State where they throw the ball for almost 400 yards a game now. They're not running it all that well, but we've seen Michael Penix lead a program to the almost promised land before in 2020 when he nearly took Indiana to the Big Ten championship game. But of course, we know they lost too many games that year. But it was impressive what they did against Michigan State last week, 29-8 at half. And I'm willing, as I said, I can go with them for this week. And they do have an explosive offense. They're number one in the Pac-12 in total offense. But I also have known the 2021 season being burnt by Penix in Indiana. I know at some point they're going to fly too close to the sun and then they're going to come back to earth. But it is just the Pac-12, so, I guess it comes down to what happens when they play Oregon. And don't sleep on them Oregon State Beavers.
Yeah, the whole Pacific Northwest. The Washington State, Oregon State, I believe still only has just that one loss, and it's the only game that anyone has paid attention to, which is really too bad for them. But, the only game anyone remembers for any of those teams is Oregon getting drubbed by Georgia 49-3. They've won all their other games. Oregon State is, Oregon State's sneaky. We didn't talk about them. They play USC this weekend. I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with USC, but they're, this is USC and Corvallis. We have seen that go poorly in the past, so that's another one to keep an eye on. Yeah, I know it's late. I know the games are sometimes hard to find. The Pacific Northwest is worth paying at least some attention to because it feels like at least one or two of those teams is going to be kind of for real this year. I think I'm leaning towards, in order, Washington, Oregon, Oregon State, Wazoo, probably in that order. But that is a part of the country that I think gets completely forgotten and overlooked, and worth at least keeping an eye on this year. Something else that's worth keeping an eye on: the Buckeye Huddle pre and post game shows coming up later today, live from Ohio Stadium. Tony Gerdeman, Kevin Noonan, and I will be there for the pregame show. We're usually going to start sometime around 4 o'clock, 3:30, something like that. But the best way to make sure you are there for the whole thing and for all the fun and to be part of the fun by asking us questions and being a part of the fun conversation in the chat is by subscribing to our channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Also hit that bell so you get notified as soon as we go live. That way we'll do what we generally do, at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half from those pregame shows. And then as soon as the game goes final, our post-game show starts up there again, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Mark Givler and Justin Whitlatch will be there right at the final gun to give you all sorts of instant insight and analysis. Then we'll have the Ohio State post-game coverage, post-game interviews with Ryan Day, CJ Stroud, a bunch of the other Buckeyes, maybe Paul Christ if things time up right. We're always over there, and somehow the timing never quite works out, but we will do that again. Tonight we'll have complete coverage from the Wisconsin post-game interview room as well. And then after that, you'll see Tony and I and Kevin on the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction show immediately after that. Again, it is usually 2.5 hours of live, continuous post-game coverage. You just kind of can't find anywhere else online right now. And so you will want to make sure you check that out at Buckeye Huddle, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, and of course at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. Enjoy the football. We will see you a little later on.